I work hard every day, do the best I can. I have a great team around me and they keep me super grounded.
Picture this for a second. A young woman steps through the player entrance at Flushing Meadows, dragging a racket bag that looks almost bigger than she is. Nobody stops her for an autograph. Nobody points a camera her way. The number next to her name on the tournament sheet reads in the hundreds, so far down the list that most casual fans wouldn't even bother looking for it. She's not there for the main event. She's there to grind through qualifying rounds, hoping for one win, then another, just to sniff the edges of the tournament everyone else is watching on television. That was August of last year. Now freeze that image and fast forward exactly 12 months. Same date, same tunnel, same enormous stadium looming overhead. But almost nothing else is the same. This time she walks in with her doubles partner beside her, a small swarm of camera crews trailing a few steps back, and a schedule in her hand listing not one, not two, but 3 separate events she's set to play across a single work week. Nobody officially declared this a spectacle. There was no press conference announcing it. But inside the grounds of the US Open this week, people keep repeating the same phrase to each other, almost in disbelief. 3 events, 5 days. Her name is Alex, and if you haven't been paying attention to tennis lately, you're about to understand why so many people suddenly are. To be clear, nobody is saying what she's doing is reckless or unprecedented in a dangerous way. It's simply rare, and in her case, it feels deliberate, almost like she and her team looked at the calendar and decided this was the moment to take on everything at once. Here's the piece of context that explains how a player barely inside the top 20 ends up with a slate this packed. Back in 2025, tournament organizers redesigned the mixed doubles competition, shrinking it into a fast 2-day sprint format specifically built to tempt top singles stars who would normally skip mixed doubles entirely. That redesign is the entire reason Alex's week even has room for 3 tournaments crammed onto one card. She's not overreaching. She's simply taking full advantage of a calendar that was engineered on purpose to allow exactly this kind of overlap. Stack that mixed doubles slot on top of a Grand Slam singles main draw spot she earned outright for the very first time in her career. Then throw in a stadium exhibition match against a rival under the lights of the biggest court in tennis. And you get this rare 5-day stretch where one athlete is juggling 3 completely different competitive experiences. It doesn't happen often. When it does happen to someone this young, this suddenly, it's worth pausing on. And here's where we need to be honest with ourselves, because there are 2 very different ways to read this story, and both of them have merit. On one hand, this is being treated as an unprecedented cultural moment for Filipino tennis. Nobody with her ranking, her age, and this exact kind of jam-packed schedule has ever walked into this tournament with this much attention on her. That's the feel-good version, and it's not wrong. But there's another version of this story, a more grounded and slightly uneasy one, and a major sports outlet actually put it bluntly last month in a headline suggesting that doubling up on an exhibition match alongside her main draw obligations could spell trouble for her singles run. Here's why that argument isn't just paranoid speculation. She's 21 years old. Just weeks ago in Cincinnati, she went the distance in a 3-set battle against a top American player and visibly ran out of steam in that final set. Now she's expected to play a mixed doubles opener, then step onto a nationally televised exhibition court, then turn around and open her Grand Slam singles campaign, potentially squeezing all 3 into less than 5 days. That's not fear-mongering. That's just basic math about recovery time and physical strain. And even the tournament's own promotional language, when hyping up her doubles pairing, leaned on words like electric, which, let's be honest, is a marketing term, not a medical one. Both of these readings, the celebration and the concern, can be true simultaneously. What separates a clear-eyed look at this story from a purely emotional one is being willing to hold both ideas at the same time, instead of picking a side and ignoring the other. And interestingly, Alex herself seems to already understand this tension better than anyone covering her. After that draining loss in Cincinnati, she told reporters something that stuck with a lot of people. That momentum is a nice idea, sure, but it's not something solid you can lean on. And it definitely doesn't guarantee anything. That's not the kind of thing you say if you genuinely believe a jam-packed schedule is automatically going to produce a storybook run. That's the kind of thing you say when you've already crunched the numbers yourself and know exactly how fragile this stretch could be. So let's actually do that math together, starting with the number that makes this entire story possible in the first place. 12 months ago, Alex was ranked 144th in the world. As of the most recent official rankings, she sits at 18th. Stop and actually absorb that for a second. A climb of over 120 spots inside a single calendar year. That single statistic is arguably the most important detail in this entire narrative, because at 144, none of what's happening this week would even be possible. You don't get invited into a marquee mixed doubles pairing at 144. You don't get handed a stadium exhibition slot under the lights at 144. You definitely don't walk into a Grand Slam with a seed next to your name at 144. At that ranking, your only path in is through qualifying, and even then, you're just hoping. Every single thing happening to Alex this week is a direct downstream consequence of that climb. None of it exists without it. So, if we want to understand this fortnight, we have to understand the climb. And within that climb, there's one week that towers above the rest. Late July, Washington, D.C., the final of a mid-tier but respected WTA tournament. Alex walks onto the court to face the tournament's top seed, a former top-ranked American star. She drops the opening set, digs in and claws back the second, and then, almost unbelievably, closes out the third set without her opponent winning a single game. A bagel set in a tournament final against a player who had spent years inside the world's top 5. That result did two things simultaneously. It handed Alex her first career WTA singles title, and it catapulted her from the mid-20s in the rankings straight into the top 20, eventually pushing her all the way to a career-high ranking in early August. And here's the historical weight behind that number. She became the first Filipino player, man or woman, to crack the top 20 of the WTA rankings during the entire modern era of the sport. That's not spin. That's not a fan's exaggeration. That's a documented official rankings milestone. And that milestone is precisely what earned her the seed position that's now shaping everything happening in New York. Which brings us to the fortnight itself, the stretch of days that gives this whole story its shape. Event number 1, the mixed doubles opening round. Alex is paired with a men's player ranked inside the world's top 5. A pairing that says a lot on its own because he chose her as his partner, not the other way around. Being selected by a player of that caliber when he could have picked from dozens of established doubles specialists is itself a quiet form of validation. Their draw wasn't gentle either. In a 16-team bracket that included some of the sport's biggest power couples and reigning finalists from the year before, Alex and her partner ran directly into a formidable husband and wife duo in round 1. It did not go their way. The match wrapped up in 2 brisk, no-nonsense sets, both going the same lopsided direction, and the whole thing was over inside an hour. Just like that, 1/3 of her ambitious fortnight was finished, and it ended in defeat. And here's something worth sitting with for a moment. This story doesn't need to spin that loss into some secret victory. It simply accepts it for what it was. The mixed doubles portion was never really meant to be the trophy. It was more like a test run, a chance to compete under pressure before the tournament that actually mattered began. Sometimes those test runs go badly, and that's exactly what happened here. Take a beat here, because the pace of everything happening to Alex this week is genuinely a lot to process, and it's worth noting that she hasn't said a single public word about that mixed doubles defeat. No frustrated social post, no tearful post-match interview, just silence. And silence in professional sports can mean one of 2 very different things. It can mean a player who has trained herself to compartmentalize completely, filing away a loss and moving forward without letting it leak into anything else. Or it can mean a player who's quietly stewing, channeling that frustration somewhere private, saving whatever emotional charge is left for the match that actually counts. Nobody outside her inner circle knows which one it is, and honestly, guessing would be irresponsible. Event number 2 takes us to the biggest stage in the sport, the main stadium court, for an exhibition match against a rival who has absolutely owned this particular matchup. This isn't a random opponent plucked out of a hat for television ratings. Earlier this year, at a major clay court tournament, this same rival beat Alex comfortably in straight sets in their opening match. Then, a few months later, at another prestigious grass court event, the same rival beat her again, just as convincingly. The head-to-head record between them right now is lopsided and not particularly friendly. But because this is an exhibition, with no ranking points on the line, it hands Alex a rare opportunity, a chance to step onto the sport's most famous court and try to flip the script against someone who has consistently had her number, all without any of the usual stakes attached. Somebody in a marketing department made the call to put these two players on that court together, fully aware of the drama built into that history. Whether or not it was the smartest decision for Alex's physical workload heading into her singles opener is a fair question, and reasonable people can disagree about it. But it's on the schedule regardless, and it officially counts as the second event of her whirlwind week. Then comes event number 3, the one this entire story has really been building toward. The women's singles main draw. When the official draw gets released, most reports out of the Philippines have Alex landing somewhere around the 17th seed. If that projection holds, something happens that has never happened before in the modern era of tennis. A Filipino player, for the very first time, walks into a Grand Slam tournament with a seed next to their name. Let's be precise about what that actually means, because it's easy to blur it with something she's already accomplished. She is not chasing the record for being the first Filipino to compete at a Grand Slam. She already holds that. She's not chasing the record for winning a Grand Slam match either, because she already has that too, from an unforgettable upset at this very tournament the year before, when she took down a player ranked inside the world's top 15 in a match that stretched well over an hour and a half, and eventually landed a permanent mention in the sport's history records. What's different this time is the seeding itself. A seed isn't just a number. It's an institutional acknowledgement. It means you no longer need a wild card to get in the door. You don't need to survive qualifying. You don't need a compelling backstory to justify your presence. The tournament's own paperwork is telling the world that you belong here on merit alone. That's the record this entire fortnight is quietly circling around, and it becomes official the exact moment the draw sheet gets printed and posted. Now, in the interest of giving you the full picture rather than just the highlight reel, there are a couple of tougher data points worth mentioning honestly. Just under 2 weeks before all of this, in Cincinnati, Alex faced a player ranked comfortably inside the world's top 5. She won the opening set. She held her own through a tight second set that came down to a tie-break adjacent finish. And then in the decisive third set, her level dropped noticeably, and she lost it clearly. That collapse in the third set is the shadow hanging quietly over this entire New York stretch, because it's the most recent, most specific, most documented example of exactly the kind of physical fade that skeptics are worried about happening again. Except this time stacked on top of an exhibition and a doubles match. It's not something Filipino sports commentary loves to dwell on, understandably, since the headline from that Cincinnati run was the impressive opening set win against elite competition. But that third set fade is precisely why the workload conversation isn't some manufactured controversy. It's grounded in something that actually happened days ago. And then there's the quieter, almost poetic detail that bookends this whole narrative. Exactly 1 year before this current tournament, at this exact same entrance, Alex's ranking sat at 144. That's the number this whole story keeps circling back to, no matter which angle you look at it from, because whatever ends up happening across the next 2 weeks of singles competition, the sheer distance she's traveled above that starting point in just 12 months is already remarkable on its own. It's not a single dramatic headline moment. It's a steady, sustained upward trajectory, which is honestly a much harder thing to fake or manufacture than one flashy win. If you want to understand exactly how good Alex's level has become right now, you don't need to ask a coach or a broadcaster. Just ask the woman who beat her in Cincinnati. That player, currently ranked inside the world's top 5 and a finalist at a major grass court tournament in the last year, spoke about Alex afterward in a way that Filipino outlets picked up immediately, describing her as a genuine fighter and praising the quality of her tennis in that match. When someone competing at that level uses a word like fighter to describe a 21-year-old who just beat them, it carries real weight in the sport's unspoken vocabulary. It signals that the opponent made things difficult, that she didn't crumble once the pressure ramped up, and it hints, uncomfortably for future opponents, that the next meeting might not end the same way. Now, here's a piece of honesty worth adding into this whole picture. There hasn't been any formal statement from the sport's governing tour acknowledging Alex's unusually compressed schedule. No official press release. No institutional alarm bells. What actually exists instead is simply the sheer accumulated weight of everything she's carrying into this tournament all at once. A top 20 world ranking, her first career title, a projected historic seeding, and 3 separate competitive events crammed into one 5-day window. That accumulated weight is really what people mean when they toss around dramatic phrases suggesting the tennis world is stunned. It's less about an official reaction and more about a collective recognition that something genuinely unusual is unfolding in real time. Zooming out even further, this moment matters beyond just one athlete's personal stat sheet. In nearly 6 decades of the sport's modern era, no Filipino man or woman ever has walked into a Grand Slam tournament with a seed attached to their name. That's not some obscure trivia footnote. That's a real structural gap in a sport that claims to reach almost every corner of the globe. The moment Alex's name appears on that draw sheet with a number beside it, that particular gap closes for good, regardless of how far she advances afterward. Regionally, she now finds herself grouped alongside a genuinely strong cluster of Asian talent, including a recent Olympic gold medalist and a former major champion working her way back toward peak form, plus continued elite consistency from other rising stars around the region. At 18th in the world, Alex isn't some outlier tagging along at the back of that group. She's legitimately one of its peers now. There's also a financial dimension worth acknowledging, even if the specific figures deserve some healthy skepticism, since they're coming primarily from Filipino media rather than official tournament breakdowns. Reports have circulated suggesting a guaranteed payout in the millions of pesos just for reaching the main draw of singles competition here, which, when stacked on top of her recent title winnings and whatever compensation comes from the mixed doubles and exhibition appearances, would make this single stretch of tennis the most financially significant period of her entire career so far. Whether every specific number reported is precisely accurate or not, the general direction is not really in question. This is, by a wide margin, the biggest payday period of her professional life to date. Culturally, the ripple effects are honestly kind of remarkable to think about. Watch parties are reportedly being organized across Metro Manila, with people planning to stay up well past midnight local time just to catch her matches live. Filipino communities scattered across multiple continents are rearranging their evenings around broadcast windows for a draw that hasn't even been finalized yet. Officials within Philippine sports have already publicly acknowledged her top 20 milestone. None of that shows up anywhere on a rankings chart. None of it appears in a prize money breakdown. But all of it shows up in the way group chats light up across 6 different time zones the moment someone types out that she's playing tonight. Now, Let's address the vulnerability directly, because glossing over it would make this whole story dishonest. Less than a day before people started really paying attention to this narrative, Alex played her actual first match of this stretch, and it did not go well. The mixed doubles loss was quick, it was public, it happened right on the tournament's opening day, and it will forever exist in the record books as the very first entry in this ambitious fortnight. She hasn't said anything about it publicly. No reaction post, no comment to press, just quiet. And if you choose to read that silence generously, it sounds exactly like a player who understands, deep down, that mixed doubles was never actually the event that was going to define this stretch of her career. The singles competition is why she came to New York in the first place. The singles competition is where her seed number actually activates and means something. The singles competition is where the real record this story keeps orbiting actually lives and breathes. Which brings us full circle, back to that same entrance she's now walked through twice, exactly 1 year apart. Same building, same doors, completely different number attached to her name. 144 the first time, 18 the second. Whatever happens across the singles draw over these next 2 weeks, whether it's an early exit, a surprising deep run,